The galaxy believed in rules. It believed in the mathematics of mass versus velocity, of energy versus shielding. The Ethelgard Imperium was the equation that solved it all. For 1,000 years, they had moved through the spiral arms like a tide of polished, living silver, bringing their unity to the lesser, chaotic races. Their conquests were not wars, they were perfections, as clean and inevitable as a mathematical proof. Worlds did not fall, they were aligned. Archon Valerius, vessel of the Ethelgard Concordance, stood on the bridge of the inevitable. His ship was not a thing of metal and wires. It was grown, a kilometer-long sliver of biometallic crystal that hummed with a low, resonant frequency. His bridge was a silent cathedral of light. Valerius himself was an avatar of this perfection, a tall, impossibly slender being of polished mercury, his head a featureless ovoid that floated serenely within a cowl of crackling, blue energy. He perceived the universe not in crude sights or sounds, but as a symphony of data, of energy, of intent. He had just finished aligning the Xylos' homeworld. The Xylos, a proud, insected race, had resisted. They had thrown their invincible armada of kinetic slug throwers at his fleet. Valerius had watched without malice or interest as his ship's Harmony shells, impenetrable fields of coherent energy, had ignored the primitive projectiles. Then his Unity lances had fired. They did not explode, they simply touched, and the Xylos' ships changed. The metal became crystalline. The insectoid crews became part of the ships. They were aligned. The process had taken less than 4 stellar hours. It was, Valerius noted, efficient. Khan, a voice chimed in his mind. It was his subarchon Lyra, her form, identical to his, shimmered into existence beside him. The Xylos system is perfected, the song is stable. It is acceptable, Valerius replied, his mental voice a smooth, passionless chord. The primitives resisted with unusual discord, a waste of their biological resources which we now must recatalog. They were driven by the chaos frequency, Lyra noted, the one you have designated, emotion. A flaw in their design, a chaotic variable that leads to inefficient outcomes. It is why the unity is necessary. Valerius turned his perception to the main holographic display, a swirling map of the galaxy. The next alignment is Sector 618, the Terran anomaly. Terra, Lyra projected, the name a dissonant, ugly sound. A single-system civilization, level 0.7 on the concordance scale. Their expansion has been erratic. They are noisy. They broadcast chaotic signals of music and drama into the void. They are infantile. And yet, Valerius noted, they are the last pocket of significant unaligned sentience in this quadrant. The concordance demands order. The song must be whole. He gestured, a river of quicksilver. They have watched us align the Xylos. They have seen our work with the Cygnian Republic. Logic dictates they will comprehend the futility of resistance. This will be a simple alignment. A formality. Our fleet arrives in 3 of their weeks, Lyra confirmed. Their primitive Sol star will be brought into the fold. Prepare the fleet, Valerius commanded. Set a course for the Aegis Proxima Gateway. We will bring them the gift of silence. The Ethelgard fleet, hundreds of shimmering, sculpted blades of light, began to move, slipping into the clean, sterile dimension of Slipstream, a place where they were the undisputed masters. Far beyond, in the cold, dark cradle of the Uit cloud, Admiral Elias Thorne, Commander-in-Chief of the Terran Confederacy Defense Fleet, watched the light of the Xylos system die. It didn't vanish. It changed. The messy, broad-spectrum signature of 1 billion living souls was snuffed out, replaced by a single, cold, resonant frequency. The Ethelgard's unity. Thorne's face, etched with the lines of 50 years of service, was a mask of granite. He stood on the bridge of the TCS Olympus, a ship that was the antithesis of Ethelgard design. It was not sleek. It was not beautiful. It was a fortress. A 5-kilometer-long block of gray, ablative-armored titanium, bristling with weapons that looked more like industrial mining equipment than instruments of war. Its bridge was hot, smelled of ozone and recycled coffee, and was filled with the quiet, frantic tapping of human hands on solid consoles. There. Gone, whispered Ensign Maya, her voice thick. Just like Cygnus, just gone. Thorne clenched his fist, the leather of his glove creaking. Get me Dr. Thorne now. A moment later, a new face appeared on his private screen, Dr. Aris Thorne, his son. Aris looked pale, thin, and exhausted, his eyes red-rimmed behind his glasses. He was in the Olympus's engine core, a place of massive, shuddering machinery. I saw it, Dad, Aris said, his voice shaky. The alignment frequency, it's perfect, clean, no entropy. I don't know if the disruption fields can handle that. They have to, Aris, Thorne's voice was a low growl. You told me they would. Theoretically, Aris snapped, his fear making him angry. They're designed to scatter energy to disrupt a coherent beam, but that signal, it's not just energy, it's information, it's a code that rewrites matter. We've never tested it against that. There's no more time for tests, son, Thorn said, his voice softening for a moment. The Ethelgard are moving their armada is en route to Aegis Proxima 3 weeks. That's all we have. And the rift drives, Aris asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. The simulation logs are terrifying. We lost 14 drones just in the last jump test. They didn't explode, Dad. They just came back wrong inside out. They are our only chance, Aris, Thorn said, his face a mask of iron once more. The enemy is faster than us, smarter than us, stronger than us. They obey the laws of physics. They are masters of them. He looked out at his own fleet, the 3rd, 5th, and 9th fleets, thousands of ships hidden in the dark. Secret armada, built over 30 years of panic and desperation, funded by a species that had seen the darkness coming. We have to be the variable they can't solve, son, Thorn finished. We have to be the ones who break the rules. Now get your drives ready. He cut the channel. He turned to his tactical officer. Signal the entire fleet. Operation Last Bastion is a go. All ships will make a consecutive riftfold to Aegis Proxima. We will be there before them. We will be waiting for them in the dark. Admiral, the tactical officer whispered, a simultaneous jump of this magnitude with an untested drive, the casualties could be catastrophic. Our casualties are already catastrophic. We don't, Commander, Thorn said, his voice final. We are humanity. We are the line, and the line must be drawn here, not one step further. Execute. As the Ethelgard fleet slid effortlessly through slipstream, dreaming of perfection and order, an entire species screamed through a dimension of chaos and pain, their crude brute force drives tearing holes in reality itself, all for the chance to be the first ones to the battlefield. For 3 weeks, the Ethelgard Imperium's Grand Armada moved through the placid, orderly currents of slipstream. Archon Valerius spent the time in a state of deep resonance, his mind communing with the great song of his people, refining the equations that would bring the Sol system into harmony. His projections were clear. The primitives, having witnessed the futility of resistance at Xylos, would offer a token, disorganized defense at the gateway, and then, faced with the majesty of the inevitable, they would capitulate. The alignment would be simple. The inevitable, followed by hundreds of shimmering, blade-like cruisers and destroyers, breached the fabric of spacetime, emerging into the normal, chaotic universe at the designated coordinates of the Aegis Proxima gateway. This was the choke point, the last stable jump plane before the inner human system. Valerius's ship hummed, its internal energies settling as its sensors began the passive, arrogant task of counting the primitive ships it was about to align. The sensors failed. They did not report no ships. They did not report a few ships. They reported error data, saturation, impossible, mass, reading. Valerius's floating ovoid head snapped forward, a gesture of profound, uncharacteristic surprise. Report, his mental voice was a sharp, dissonant chord. Subarchon Lyra's form materialized, her biometallic skin flickering. Archon, the visuals are incoherent, the primitives. Valerius bypassed his own logical sensors and opened a direct visual feed to the bridge's main viewer, where there should have been empty space and the distant pinprick of a yellow star. There was nothing, no void, no stars. There was only a wall of gray, angular, ugly metal. It was a fleet so vast, so dense, so impossibly large that it filled their entire forward view. Thousands of ships, from tiny destroyers to the gargantuan Leviathan in the center, the TCS Olympus. They were not flying in a formation. They were parked shoulder to shoulder, a barricade of fury and steel. Archon, Lyra's thought voice was thin. The stars, they are blocked. The tidal moment. This is not possible, Valerius projected. Our slipstream drives are the fastest in the galaxy. We were 3 weeks in transit. They could not have known our target. They could not have raced us here. It is a violation of physics. On the bridge of the Olympus, Admiral Elias Thorne watched the Ethelgard fleet materialize. They were beautiful, deadly, and they were confused. They've stopped, Maya whispered, her knuckles white. They're just sitting there. They're recalculating, Thorne said, his voice a low growl. Their perfect equation just hit a variable they didn't account for. They don't understand how we got here. He knew the cost. He had the reports. 93 ships, 93 crews lost in the riftfold, not destroyed, just gone, erased by their own technology. A price paid in blood just to be first to the fight. They're hailing us, the comms officer said. Put it through, Thorne commanded. The face of Archon Valerius filled the screen, a passionless shifting shape of liquid silver. Primitive vessel Olympus. The Archon's mental voice slid directly into their minds, cold and sterile. Your illogical display is noted. It is a waste of resources your species has designated for perfection. Stand down. Your weapons. Prepare for alignment. The song must be whole. Thorne leaned forward, his aged, grizzled face filling his own camera. Archon Valerius, Thorne's voice boomed in classic messy audio, a grating, chaotic sound to the Ethelgard. This is Admiral Elias Thorne of the Terran Confederacy. You are trespassing. Your gift of affection is hereby refused. Your song is nothing but the screaming of the races you've murdered. Turn your fleet around, or we will turn it to scrap. On the inevitable, Valerius recoiled from the sheer dissonance of the humans' projection. So much anger, so much pointless, chaotic emotion. The variable is to be solved. Then Valerius concluded. He cut channel. Lyra, all forward cruisers a probing volley. Unity lances target their central mass. Show them the inevitability of the math. Yes, Archon. Dozens of Ethelgard cruisers glided forward, beams of pure blue-white energy, the same beams that had aligned the Xylos fleet in minutes. Lanced across the void, they struck the human fleet, and nothing happened. The beams hit a flickering, shimmering field that was almost invisible to the eye. Dr. Aris Thorne's disruption fields. The lances did not get blocked. They did not create explosions. They hit the fields and splayed the coherent energy. The alignment code was shattered into a useless, chaotic spray of light and static. It was like watching a laser pointer try to cut through a waterfall. The human fleet didn't even flinch. What Lyra's thought projection was a shriek of disbelief. Archon, our lances, they are ineffective. The primitives are scattering the unity frequency. It's impossible. Valerius stared, his perfect weapon rendered useless by primitives. This was not a war. This was an insult to logic. On Aris, Thorne let out a choked, half-mad laugh of relief. It worked. My God, Dad, it worked. There alignment is just noise now, Admiral. Thorne's face was still iron. It bought us time, but it won't win us the war. They're arrogant, they're confused, they still think we play by their rules. Let's show them what chaos really looks like. He opened channel to a small, agile squadron of 12 ships at the front of the formation. Destroyers, sleek and dark. Reaper Squadron Captain Reed, Thorne ordered. You have the con. Your squadron is Alpha Strike. Show them how humanity moves, Captain Kalen. Reaper Reed grinned, his face young, eager, and terrifying. He was strapped into the command chair of the Aegis. Admiral Reed's voice crackled over the comm. Reaper Squadron, you heard the man. Let's get messy. Riftfold on my mark. 3, 2, 1, fold. Valerius was in the middle of ordering his fleet to remodulate their lance frequencies when his tactical display screamed. The 12 primitive ships at the front of the human line did not fire. They did not accelerate. They vanished. Where did they Go, Lyra demanded, warning energy spike inside our formation sector. Epsilon Kalen Reed's squadron of 12 destroyers tore open reality directly between two of Valerius's largest cruisers. They had jumped less than a kilometer. It was an insane brute force maneuver that should have torn them apart. They were side the Ethelgard's Harmony shells point blank range weapons free. Reed roared, give 'em hell. The human ships unleashed a primitive brutal barrage, not energy but massive high velocity tungsten slugs, plasma torpedoes with fission warheads. It was a knife fight in a cathedral. The Ethelgard cruisers, their shields useless against foes that were already inside them, were torn apart. The biometallic crystal shattered. The Unity song was silenced by the brutal chaotic roar of human explosions. Valerius watched two of his ships die in seconds, and for the first time in his thousand-year existence, his logical mind perceived a new frequency. It was cold, it was dissonant, it was fear. The Ethelgard formation, a thing of perfect mathematical beauty, shattered into chaos. Reaper Squadron was a pack of wolves inside a flock of sheep. Kalen Reed was laughing, a wild, sharp sound over the comms as his ship, the Aegis, banked so hard the internal gravity groaned. His cannons, crude kinetic drivers, were firing at point-blank range, turning the elegant crystalline hull of an Ethelgard destroyer into a cloud of shattered fragments. Port batteries fire. Starboard, jam their frequency. Jester on my 6. We're not letting these silver-plated bastards breathe, Reed yelled. His squadron was a whirlwind of controlled, brutal violence. They were using the rift drives not for long jumps, but for microfolds, skipping, dodging, and repositioning inside the enemy fleet with physics-defying speed. One moment they were there, the next they were gone, appearing 1,000 meters away to unleash another volley. The Ethelgard, whose tactics relied on long-range, orderly energy duels, had no counter for this. It was like trying to shoot ghosts with a cannon. Archon, Lyra's mental voice was strained, bordering on the very emotion she despised. They are inside our command and control net. They are disorderly. They are not fighting like a fleet. They are fighting like individuals. This was the truth. The 12 human ships were moving with a terrifying, unpredictable synergy, each pilot anticipating the other, a dance of pure chaotic instinct. Valerius's mind worked cold and fast, cutting through his own internal dissonance. This tactic is illogical. It is wasteful of energy. It must be stressful on their primitive drives. They are a distraction. Order the fleet to create a harmonic wall. All ships consolidate. Form a sphere. We will crush them between our shields. The Ethelgard fleet, hundreds strong, began to move. They stopped firing, their priority shifting. They contracted, their powerful engines pushing them into a single, massive, terrifying ball, their Harmony shells merging into one impenetrable, solid wall of energy. Kalen Reed suddenly found his battlefield, shrinking. "Whoa, Admiral," he reported, his voice suddenly losing its laughter. They're turtling. They're forming a sphere. We're outside. Their formation now, but they're ignoring us. They're preparing for a massive energy pulse. They're going to try to blow your main line away. On the Olympus, Admiral Thorne watched the Ethelgard sphere grow. It was beautiful and deadly. They've adapted. They've sacrificed their mobility for absolute defense. They're going to use their main weapon. Dad. Eris Thorne's voice was frantic from the engine room. The rift drives Reaper's squadron. The energy readings are critical. All those microfolds, they're burning out. The containment fields, the reality anchors are failing. He brought up a telemetry screen. The 12 ships of Reaper Squadron were glowing not with heat but with a sickly greenish-black light. They were leaking space-time. Kalen. Admiral Thorne barked, his voice raw. "Captain Reed, disengage. Pull your squadron back to the line now. Your drives are failing." "Negative, Admiral." Reed's voice came back, strained with G-forces. "We can't. We're trying to find a seam in this goddamn bubble. We can break it." "That is an order, Captain," Thorne roared. "Get back here." "We can't, Admiral." It was Reed's navigator. "We're trying to rift out, but the Ethelgard sphere, it's projecting something, a gravity well, a massive 1 hour drives can't get a lock. We're pinned here." A cold, terrible silence fell over the Olympus bridge. Valerius had set a trap. He had used his own ships as bait, letting Reed's squadron chew on them, waiting for their drives to become unstable, and then he had pinned them just as he formed his impenetrable wall. The harmonic wall was now complete, and Reaper squadron was trapped outside of it, right in front of the human fleet. And from the center of the Ethelgard sphere, a new energy signature began to build, not a lance but a wave, a harmonic wave designed to overload the humans. Disruption fields all at once. They're using us as a shield. Kalen Reed realized, his voice suddenly cold and quiet. Admiral, you can't fire on that sphere without hitting us first, and if that wave hits us, our drives will detonate. If it hits your fleet, it will overwhelm your fields. It's a checkmate. Admiral Thorne closed his eyes. He saw the perfect logic of the Ethelgard trap. He had no move. Kalen, Thorne whispered, his voice breaking. Son, what are your options? There was a long pause. Reed looked around his own bridge at his crew, young, terrified, but resolute. He looked back at the Ethelgard sphere, now glowing like a new sun. He looked at the massive gray wall of the human fleet. Behind him, his fleet, his home. Options asterisk. Admiral Reed's voice came back impossibly calm. We are Reaper squadron. We don't get checkmated. We flip the board. He turned to his own engineer. Jester, how bad are the drives? They're gone. Kale, containment is at 5%. We can't fold out. We can't even move. They're going to implode in less than 2 minutes. Can you make them implode outward? Reed asked quietly. The engineer stared at him. He understood. Kale, no, that's not an explosion. That's a singularity, a dirty one. The Ethelgard wall, Reed said, pointing. It's a merged shield. It's strong, but it's brittle. It's one system. What happens if we punch a hole in it? Not with a torpedo, but with reality itself. Kalen, Thorne roared, hearing the chatter. Do not. That is Admiral Reed cut him off, his voice like steel. You said we had to break the rules. This is the last rule. Get your fleet ready to move. We're about to open a door for you. He looked at his own console. He broadcast to his squadron. Reapers, you know the mission. We are the scalpel. It's time to make the cut. Overload your rift drives. On my mark, let's show these bastards what illogical really looks like. On the Olympus, Admiral Thorne watched in horror, his hand outstretched to the screen. Kalen, no. For Earth, Reed shouted. For humanity, mark. The 12 ships of Reaper squadron did not explode. They imploded one by one. They collapsed in on themselves, their overloaded rift drives failing catastrophically. 12 simultaneous pinpricks of perfect blackness appeared in space, and then reality tore the 12 microsingularities, unleashed a wave of pure gravitational chaos. They ripped a hole in the void itself. The Ethelgard's perfect, beautiful, impenetrable, harmonic wall shattered. The reality wave hit it, and the merged shield cracked like glass, a gaping, bleeding wound torn open in the heart of the enemy's defense. The Ethelgard's own energy wave, building to fire, fizzled and died. Its containment broken. Kalen Reed and his squadron were gone, erased, but they had left behind a gate. Silence, a profound, terrible, echoing silence, descended upon the bridge of the Olympus. The light from the 12 spatial detonations, the death of Reaper squadron, washed over Admiral Thorne's flagship, a silent, ghostly aurora. The Admiral stood frozen, his hand still outstretched as if he could somehow pull Kalen Reed back from the void. He was gone. The cost, the terrible, impossible cost, had been paid. Kalen, Thorne whispered. The name was a prayer, a curse. Dad. Eris Thorne's voice crackled over the internal calm, thin and reedy. He was weeping. Dad, They did it. They used the drives as bombs, as singularity, weapons. My God, Dad, that's uncontrolled. The reality in that sector is now poisoned. He was right. The tactical display showed the hole Reed had torn. It wasn't clean. It was a bleeding, festering wound in space-time, leaking exotic energies. It was a scar. On the inevitable, Archon Valerius was experiencing the full, crushing weight of illogic. His perfect harmonic wall was shattered, gone. His fleet moments ago an impenetrable sphere was now exposed, its formation broken. But worse, far worse, was what had broken it. Archon! Lyra's mental voice was a pure, unfiltered tremor. The primitives, they destroyed themselves. They weaponized their own ships. They unmade reality. This is madness. Valerius stared at the spatial wound. His sensors were screaming. The slipstream drives of his fleet could not function near that scar. The humans in their suicidal barbarism had poisoned the battlefield. They had taken away his ability to retreat. This was not war. This was desecration. This cannot be. Valerius projected, his own mind struggling against the chaos. Open a channel to the human admiral now. On the Olympus, the hail request flashed. He wants to talk, Maya whispered, her face pale. After that, Thorn straightened. The grief was still there, a physical weight, but it was now being forged into something else, something cold and hard as asterisk diamond. On screen, Thorn commanded. The face of Valerius reappeared. The liquid silver was no longer serene. It was agitated, turbulent, primitive. Admiral Thorn Valerius's voice was no longer a smooth chord. It was a jangle of dissonant notes. Explain this madness, this illogical waste. Your pilots, your Reaper squadron, they destroyed themselves. They destroyed reality. For what? This is not victory. This is failure. Thorn let the silence stretch. He let alien wait. Then he spoke, his voice a low, deadly rumble of controlled fury. You are correct, Archon. Thorn said, his eyes burning into the camera. It is illogical. It is inefficient. It is everything your perfection despises. He gestured to a secondary screen and sent it across the channel. It was a recording from the Xylos homeworld. Harrowing, fragmented images of the perfection of the insected people being aligned, their bodies twisted and merged with metal, their minds silenced, their screams echoing until became part of your song. You perfected the Xylos, Thorn hissed. You harmonized the Signian Republic. We talked to the refugees. We heard the broadcasts. We know your unity is Valerius. It is erasure. It is the death of the soul. Thorn leaned in, his face filling the Archon's view. You see, you fight to conquer, to add another number to your equation. There is no cost for you. It is just process. Humanity, we are fighting to exist, and we have decided that there is no cost too high to prevent what you did to the Xylos. We are not fighting an equation, Thorn continued, his voice dropping to a grief-stricken whisper. We are fighting for our souls, for our right to be chaotic and messy and alive. Captain Kalen Reed knew that his squadron knew that his death was not a failure. It was a choice. He didn't die fighting for victory. He died fighting for us. He just taught you the difference. Valerius was silent. He finally understood. He had made a fundamental, catastrophic error in his calculations. He was not fighting a primitive fleet. He was fighting a species that viewed self-annihilation as a valid tactical option. Species that was willing to break reality itself just to spite him. His logic had no answer for this. His mind reeled. For the first time he hesitated. Admiral Thorn saw it in the flicker of the Archon's energy field, in the lack of an immediate logical response. He saw fear. Thorn cut the channel. He turned to his bridge. His face was a mask of vengeance. He's afraid, Thorn barked. He's lost. He doesn't know what to do. The breach is open. Reaper squadron bought us that gate. We will not let their sacrifice be in vain. He slammed his fist on the console. All ships, this is the Admiral Protocol. Juggernaut is now in effect full, conventional, thrust all, power. Engines and forward shields, we are not folding, we are not being clever, we are going to punch a hole straight through their gut. He pointed at the gaping spatial scar. All wings, launch all guns, fire through the breach for Reaper, for Earth, charge the entire human fleet. Thousands of ships, a wall of fury and steel ignited its engines. It did not use physics defying drives, it used brute savage Newtonian force, a single massive unstoppable punch aimed directly at the heart of the stunned Ethelgard armada. The war of logic was over, the war of rage had just begun. Juggernaut was not a strategy, it was a stampede. The human fleet, a solid wall of overlapping disruption fields and thick, primitive titanium armor, surged forward with the momentum of a collapsing star. It was the antithesis of Ethelgard tactics. It was messy. It was loud. It was a chaotic, brutal head-on charge aimed directly at the shimmering, bleeding wound Cailan Reed had torn in the enemy's defenses. Valerius, his mind still reeling from Thorn's declaration, was tactically paralyzed. They are charging directly into our main battery range. It is suicidal. Archon, Lyra screamed. They are ignoring our lances, the disruption fields they are holding, and the ships, the armor. It is too thick. Our smaller weapons are ineffective. The Ethelgard fleet, designed for elegant, long-range energy combat, was suddenly facing a brawl. The human ship slammed into the Ethelgard line like a fist through plate glass. The TCS Indomitable, a human heavy cruiser, didn't even fire. It rammed an Ethelgard destroyer, its reinforced solid iron prow shearing the crystalline ship in half. "Boarding pods, launch, launch, launch!" a human voice roared over the fleet-wide channel. From the bellies of the human cruisers, hundreds of tiny steel pods were fired like shotgun pellets. They were not subtle. They were drills with engines. They hammered against the Ethelgard hulls, ignoring the failing shields, and burrowed inside. Archon, an Ethelgard ship captain, shrieked in the Unity song. "The primitives are inside my ship. They have chemical weapons. They are wearing armor and carrying projectors of fire." Human Marines, flooding the sterile, perfect corridors of the Ethelgard ships, armed with shotguns, plasma cutters, and a level of personal, primal fury the Ethelgard had never, ever encountered. The song of unity was shattered by the screams of Ethelgard crews being hunted in their own pristine vessels. This was hell. On the Olympus, Aris Thorn was working, his grief a cold engine in his mind. "Dad, they're trying to reform the shield. They're adapting. They're modulating the harmony shells to counter the disruption fields." He was right. Valerius, recovering his senses, had ordered his remaining fleet to focus their energy to create a new kind of shield, one based on the very instability the humans had created. Aris Thorn growled, his own ship shuddering as it fired its main batteries. "I need an answer." I have one," Aris yelled, his fingers flying over a console. "The rift scars, the echoes, the space-time wounds left by Reaper's squadron, they're still resonating there." "Abel, what about them?" "Their amplifiers, Dad, the Ethelgard, their song, it's psionic, it's how they connect, it's how they think, that's their weakness, they are a hive mind." "Aris, speak English." "I'm going to broadcast a signal," Aris shouted. "Not a jamming signal, something worse. I recorded it, the sound, the psychic scream of the Xylos. Alignment, I can." He swallowed, his eyes wild. "I can broadcast our grief, Cailan's death, the energy signature of their sacrifice. I can beam it into the rift scars, and the scars will amplify it across their entire Unity network." "Do it," Thorn roared. Aris slammed his hand down. He focused the Olympus's main sensor dish not at the enemy but at the gaping black wounds in space. He broadcast a single concentrated beam of pure raw human emotion, a frequency of chaos, a symphony of pain, rage, loss, and unbreakable defiance. The rift scars received it, and they screamed across the Ethelgard fleet. Every single Ethelgard froze. Valerius doubled over, his liquid silver form convulsing the song, his connection to his people, his source of logic. Strength was suddenly filled with shrieking, with agony, with the cacophony of a billion murdered Xylos souls, with the burning suicidal fury of Cailan Reed. It was psychic, agony their harmony shells didn't just falter, they died, their ships stopped moving, their lances went dark, the entire Ethelgard armada was paralyzed, clutching their minds in shared torment. Admiral Thorn saw the opening, the ships were dead in the water, all of them except one, the inevitable, the flagship. Its harmony shell was flickering, but holding Valerius was strong. He was resisting. Aris, Thorn said, his voice suddenly calm. Your signal, it worked, it bought us the battle, but he will recover. We have to end this. He looked at his tactical officer. Divert all power from the disruption fields, all power from engines, divert everything to the main weapon. Admiral Maya whispered, her eyes wide with terror. Sir, we can't. The rift cannon, it's not a weapon, it's a drive. If we fire it as a beam, the feedback. I know the cost, Commander Thorn said. Dad, no, Aris screamed over the comm. You can't. If you fire that thing, the backlash will overload our own rift core. It will kill the Olympus. It will kill you. Kalen Reed bought us the breach. Aris, Thorn said, his voice impossibly gentle. It's my job to finish the fight. Your mind, son, your mind is the most valuable weapon we have. He looked at his security officer. Escort Dr. Thorn to escape Pod 1 now. That is my final order. Dad, no, do this, Dad, Aris's voice screamed as he was dragged away. Admiral Thorn turned back to his console. His face was calm. He watched the inevitable as its shields began to strengthen. The entire prow of the TCS Olympus, 5 kilometers of metal, screeched and groaned as it pulled apart, revealing a glowing, swirling vortex of pure unstable reality. The rift cannon, you wanted our world, Valerius, Thorn whispered. You can have this instead. He slammed his hand down. Fire. A beam of pure non-existence lanced out. It was not light, it was not energy, it was a spear of nothing. It struck the inevitable. The Archon's flagship did not explode. It stopped and then slowly, like a painting dipped in acid, it unraveled, it dissolved. The biometallic crystal crumbled into atoms. Archon, Valerius, and his entire ship were erased from the universe. A moment later, the feedback hit the Olympus. A wave of black rift energy washed back over the human flagship. The lights on the bridge died. The comm went silent. The ship froze. Admiral Elias Thorn was gone. The silence that followed the Olympus's final desperate shot was absolute. The battle stopped. The chaotic psychic scream that Aris had unleashed faded. The brutal close-quarters brawl ended. All that remained was the wreckage, the drifting, silent hulks, and the gaping, reality-bending scar left by Reaper Squadron. The Ethelgard fleet, its Archon erased, its flagship unmade, and its unity song shattered by a blast of pure, weaponized human grief, was broken. For several long, agonizing minutes, the two fleets simply floated, ghosts in a graveyard. Then on the bridge of the Aegis, Kalen Reed's former command, now led by his executive officer, Commander Eva Rostova, Aris Thorn's escape pod was hauled into the shuttle bay. He stumbled onto the bridge, his face pale, his eyes hollow. He was no longer a scientist. He was an orphan. Dr. Thorn, Rostova said, her own voice thick with grief. We won, Admiral Thorn. He did it. Aris just stared at the main view screen. He looked at the Olympus. It was dark, a tomb, a 5-kilometer monument to his father's sacrifice. And then he looked at the enemy. The Ethelgard fleet was moving. It was not an attack. It was not a surrender. It was a rout. One by one, the shimmering biometallic ships, the few that hadn't been crippled or boarded, turned. Their slipstream drives, now stable as the psychic storm had passed, spooled up. They did not fire a final volley. They did not send a message. They fled. They ran. They ran from the insanity of Sector 618. They ran from the ghosts in the machine. They ran from the species that would rather break reality than bend a knee. They ran from an enemy whose grief was a weapon and whose sacrifice was a strategy. Within 10 minutes, the Aegis Proxima Gateway was empty of all but human ships. The cost was staggering. The human fleet was battered. Nearly half of its ships were destroyed or critically damaged. The Olympus, the heart of the fleet, was a cold, dead husk. Reaper Squadron was a memory, but They held the stars, once blocked, were visible, again clear and bright, and there's Eris Thorn, now the de facto senior authority in the fleet by name and by blood, stood on the bridge of the Aegis. He felt empty. The victory tasted like ash. A young ensign, the same one who had wept for the Xylos, approached him. "Dr. Thorn, sir, what do we do now?" "There. Gone." Eris looked at the ensign, then back at the floating tomb of the Olympus. He finally understood his father. He understood Kalen Reed. He understood the terrible, awful clarity of their choice. He took a deep, shuddering breath. "They're gone," Eris said, his voice quiet but carrying a new, hard authority. "They're gone because we showed them something. Illogical something. Their equations could not solve." He walked to the front viewport, placing his hand on the cold glass. "The Ethelgard conquer worlds. They take resources. They fight for perfection, for order. They believed war was mathematics. Today we taught them that war is tragedy." He paused, his eyes finding the scar in space where Reaper Squadron had died. "We showed them a species that will fight for grief, a species that will weaponize its own soul, a species that will look at the fundamental laws of the universe and say, 'Number you move.'" Eris turned to Commander Rostova. His eyes were no longer the eyes of a scientist. They were the eyes of his father. "Commander," he ordered, "begin search and rescue. Send a message to Earth. Tell them the war is over. Tell them we paid the price." He looked back at the stars. "They will not be back. They finally understand the cost of us. We are human, and this is our sky." The galaxy had learned a new equation, the one where logic failed, the one where humanity was the answer.